Hello and welcome to the Week 9 episode of the Power Grid. It's the Footballguys.com daily fantasy show. I'm joined as always by Football Guys staffers Jeff Pasquino, John Lee, Devin Knotts, and Ryan Hester. Guys, it's been a wild few days with the trade deadline on Tuesday and some really key injuries that have come in just before we started recording the show. So we've got a lot to break down here. We're going to jump right into the Vegas lines. John, I'm going to pitch it to you. Tell us, what is the Vegas landscape for Week 9?
It's kind of crazy, actually. I mean, with all the injuries, the trades, we've had a lot of stuff going on. This is probably one of the more difficult shows we've done because the information is so rapidly changing. The one thing that really stands out is we have three teams at the top that are all touchdown favorites. That's New Orleans against Tampa Bay, Seattle against Washington, and Houston, surprisingly, is still a touchdown favorite over Indianapolis. And all three of these, I think you can look squarely at their running games. Potentially, New Orleans for sure. We know that Mark Ingram's going to be a home favorite there. They've been feeding him the ball since Adrian Peterson has left the scene. Houston is the same. Now that we know that Deshaun Watson, this evening, we're recording on Thursday, Deshaun Watson out for the year with a torn ACL during practice this afternoon. And so I think that means they probably lean a lot more on Lamar Miller with Tom Savage under center. And then in Seattle, it's an interesting thing. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about this. We get to the running back section, but Pete Carroll's gone on record saying that Eddie Lacy has earned more repetitions. He's $3,200 on DraftKings this week, and Seattle has picked up an excellent offensive lineman in a trade with the aforementioned Texans. So, it's an interesting component. And, it only took us about 2 minutes in the show, and Devin is already being contrarian. I said it's worth talking about, and Devin says it's not. I would strongly disagree with that. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll
save it for the running back section.
We can talk about it, but
let's save it for the running back section.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah. Ryan, we've got those three high implied totals at the top. What else do you see in Vegas that piques your interest for DFS?
The game that I'm looking at is the Tampa-New Orleans. I know we did talk about it, so I'm not going to bring much original to the table, but that's the one that I really want to dissect and figure out, are we looking at the New Orleans run game or pass game? We know that in past years, New Orleans has been a high-octane passing team, but this year it's a little different. Their defense is significantly better, but similar to their offense, it's the opposite of their offense. Their pass defense is better. Their run defense isn't necessarily. So I'm also looking at the guys on Tampa Bay as well, and we can get to them as we get into the positional sections. But I think that game has a lot of potential to kind of make a big difference in a lot of people's lineups this week.
Definitely. Jeff, there's a couple other games kind of at the top of the implied totals. What else draws your eye?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the Dallas-Kansas City game. I think that's going to be a lot of points. To figure out where the points are coming from is going to be the key. That's a game everybody needs to look at. That's probably the number 3 game on the docket.
Yeah, and with it being sort of even right now, pick your team and a 51.5 point total. That is your highest total of the week. Let's move into quarterbacks. Devin, I'm going to pitch this to you first, but I want to talk injuries before I get your take on quarterbacks. We've obviously got Deshaun Watson tore his ACL in practice today. He's out for the season. Tom Savage will be starting. That's a big change for that high-octane Texans offense. Carson Palmer is out with a broken arm. Drew Stanton will be starting for the Cardinals. And then Trevor Siemian is out due to interceptions. And Brock Osweiler will be starting for the Denver Broncos. So 3 switches there at quarterback. Devin, who do you like at quarterback this week?
I was going to say Brock Osweiler as a joke, but I can't even think of one. Let's go with Dak Prescott. So there's a couple other ones that will be mentioned. Couple quarterbacks who had some big games last week will be mentioned. But Prescott's in a really good situation this week. We don't really know what they're going to do at running back. Alfred Morris, we think, is going to at least get the first crack at it. But they may have a rotation there as well. this Kansas City secondary has not been good. So they ended up benching EJ Gaines. And over the past couple of weeks, they've really struggled. They're allowing 1.6 touchdowns per game to opposing wide receivers, and their safety play has been pretty brutal. So look for Dak. Hasn't been great this year. I mean, a lot of his value has been predicated off of touchdowns, and Dez Bryant has had one of the worst years of his career, the second lowest per game average in yards. But this is a game that I think the Cowboys really try to take advantage of, this prime matchup against the Chiefs passing defense.
Yeah, it might be a week for sort of a get-right week for those passing stats. John Lee, what do you see at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I mean, I think heading into tonight, Deshaun Watson was likely the chalk pick. And now I think it's actually really interesting to see what's going to happen with this Houston offense. You've got Tom Savage leading the team, and I'm certainly not going to just to save Devin the heart palpitations. I'm not going to say anything about Tom Savage in terms of playing him in fantasy circles, although he is extremely cheap. But I think you stay away from that. I think it's Lamar Miller this week. Outside of him, I think my play this week is either Drew Brees at home against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has been absolutely horrendous in terms of defending the pass this season. I think they're giving up the most points to wide receivers, and I think potentially the second most to quarterbacks. He is a little bit more expensive, though, and so if you need a little bit of salary relief, I think you can look to Russell Wilson. I led off talking about how his offensive line is improved this week with the trade that was made with Houston earlier in the week. And it looks like Pete Carroll may have pulled away the reins, so to speak, and let him do what he needs to do. 4 of his past 5 games have been big games, and I expect him to continue this week at home against Washington.
Well, I think he kind of has to get rid of the reins because that rushing game has looked so terrible.
Yep.
But like you said, maybe they'll get a little bit of a shot in the arm with some offensive line help. Jeff, those seem to be the 3 top quarterbacks to me: Prescott, Brees, and Wilson, in terms of cash game play, high floor, safe plays. Is there a different guy you're looking at in cash, or can you give us some GPP guys that you like?
Well, I'm going to put a knock on Brees a little bit out of that category, just because I think there's a lot to be said for the running backs, and there's a lot of different ways that the Saints can win that game, and they've been effective running the ball. So I get the matchup. I get what they're saying about Brees, and he's the most expensive of the 3. So I would lean more towards Wilson or Prescott, and not Wilson's my favorite. But as far as tournaments, Carson Wentz has been great all season, and he's going to be low owned this week against Denver. And I understand that Denver has great outside cornerbacks, but you're going to have Zach Ertz eating all day long, and he's going to get short dump-off passes, Aguilar out of the slot. I like Wentz a lot in tournaments this week. I also like Marcus Mariota against the Ravens. I think that they're going to get overlooked. They're coming off of a bye. The Ravens' defense has been very suspect. It is dependent on who's going to be playing. If Delanie Walker is hurt, you may have a sleeper at tight end. But I think Mariota is another GPP option I'm looking at, and I don't mind Kirk Cousins possibly against Seattle because they're going to have to put up points, and we saw what happened last week.
Do we trust Mariota? He's been so bad this year.
He's been hurt, and now he just had time off to recover. So I think this is a good time for him to come out well rested, low owned. I like him.
DraftKings, I can see it. FanDuel at 7,800 is too high.
Yeah, his price is more appealing, and so is Wentz, honestly, more appealing over at DraftKings. Mariota only has 7 touchdowns this year. That's pretty.
He hasn't been good.
Yeah. I was going to say the matchup scared me about Mariota, and then I just pulled up Baltimore's QB history, I guess, this year. Matt Moore, Case Keenum, Mitch Trubisky, E.J. Manuel.
Nobody.
Ben Roethlisberger, Blake Bortles, Kevin Hogan / Deshaun Kaiser, and Andy Dalton. So it's much like the Steelers were giving up 150 yards a game, and then they faced Matt Stafford, who put up 400. So it could be a similar situation there. I do agree Mariota hasn't been good, but if people might see that, that red defense versus position when they're trying to pick the lineup there and get scared away by Baltimore. But the strength of schedule is really bad.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm off Mariota this week, but he's got upside if you think about his play last year. I just don't know if that carries over to this week. Ryan, do you have another quarterback you want to talk about?
Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Similar to, I guess, the argument I made for Russell Wilson the last 2 weeks was that this team is going to score points, and they're not going to do it with running backs, at least on the ground with running backs. So, we've got Cam Newton facing an Atlanta team who gives up more receptions to running backs than any other team in the league, with a running back on Carolina in Christian McCaffrey, who is targeted more than any other running back in the league. So you've got, the Newton to McCaffrey connection. You've got Newton's legs that can help you out. And if they're going to score, it's going to be via Cam Newton. So I think for GPPs, he's somebody, he's not super safe for cash. It's a GPP recommendation, but I think he's one I would look at.
And in GPPs, I like Alex Smith a little bit here in this high total game. He's not usually like a sexy upside pick, but he's had some pretty high upside games this year, especially when he gets going in the rushing game a little bit. He tends to get some ground yards.
One more real quick. Don't sleep on Jared Goff on DraftKings at 5,500.
Yeah.
Janoris Jenkins is out for the game. So people tend to forget about players who are on the bye the previous week, I've seen. So people might actually just overlook Goff and because they're only looking at, hey, what happened last week instead of what's happened over the course of the year.
Well, and you also might get a lot of Gurley ownership there instead.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. People are going to be scared off of what they've seen of the Giants secondary in previous weeks, and it's depleted this week. So it's not the secondary that the Giants usually have. Let's talk about running backs. Devin, I'll pitch this one to you first. Let me talk about a couple of moves, though. Ezekiel Elliott looks like he's not going to play because of the suspension finally catching up with him. So we should talk about those Dallas running backs a little bit more. And then Jay Ajayi was traded to Philadelphia. Now, he's not really in play this week, but I don't know if there's any long shot chance about talking about any of this Miami backfield for Sunday Night Football. I don't really have any interest in it, but let's see the Black Eyed Joes. Is there any kind of GPP interest in a Miami running back this week at all? Okay, Devin. Okay, I'm going to pitch it to you first. You're the only one who put up the green sign, so I want to hear your take on that, and then tell us about some other running backs you have interest in.
Yeah, in GPPs, Kenyon Drake has the ability to run. I mean, he's a kicker. He's a former kick returner. He has the ability to potentially break a long catch. At 4,000 on DraftKings, I know that they don't have the Sunday night game, but it's not. I mean, you're not hoping for a lot from either Damian Williams or Kenyon Drake or whoever the running back is in Miami, but it's a situation where it's not a bad matchup going against Oakland. So they're going to try to run the ball, and I think one of those two could have success. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it would be Drake if you're going to pick one of the two. And I think that it's purely a salary relief choice to get, if you're going to load up at other positions. But we might come up with some other values.
I mean, if Jalen Richard and those types of running backs have value, they're 1 or 2% owned. We've seen them break long runs. So, throwing them in, I'm not saying throw them in a several $100 GPP, but throw them in a $3 GPP. Why not?
Right. Tell me about a cash game running back you like this week.
Cash game running back that I like this week. Well, it's a little bit tricky. So a lot of the great cash game plays that we've typically grown accustomed to are not in great matchups. The one that I'll go to is my favorite this week is probably Kareem Hunt, which actually scares me a little bit because he's actually struggled over the past couple of weeks, but Hunt has that ability to catch the ball, which Dallas has been significantly better against the run now that Sean Lee is back, but they have had some issues against running backs catching the ball out of the backfield. So Jalen Smith still is struggling in run defense for the Cowboys this year. So Hunt is probably my top guy, but looking at the rushing matchups that we produce, the positive matchups that we have this week are Arizona, Cincinnati, Houston, Miami, and Tennessee. So not a lot of great matchups for great running backs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. John, I'll pitch it to you for running backs here. Would you agree with that Hunt assessment going up against Dallas? And I want to get your take on the Dallas running backs.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I put up the green black eye Joe. I think that Hunt, if you can afford him, if the opportunity cost is not too high this week, he probably is the preeminent running back that you want. I just don't think that the Cowboys have the defensive personnel to match up well against the type of explosiveness that he brings to the game. On the other side of the ball, to answer your question, Austin, the thing is, we've got two running backs in Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, who are similarly priced, and kudos to both sites for doing it, 5,500, 5,600 respectively. And we think that Alfred Morris is going to get the majority of looks out of the backfield, at least at the onset of this game. But the price is so high, I don't think it's worth the risk of going that way. I think, this week, we'll talk a little bit about Des Bryant in a bit. And I myself am not crazy about the personnel matchup, but I do think if the Cowboys are going to move the ball, they almost have to force the ball to Des. And that's the way that I think the Cowboys move the ball this week, through short passes to guys like Cole Beasley, Jason Witten, and then going for scores with a guy like Des Bryant. I'm not very high on these Dallas running backs.
So even on FanDuel at 5,600 for Morris, I'm just asking. I'm not challenging. You're closer to it than I am.
Yeah, I think at 5,600 on FanDuel, it's a really risky thing for me. I don't think he's a GPP play because he needs 100 yards and a touchdown. Yeah. For a cash game play, if you need to go that way, 60 yards and a touchdown, I think, is entirely doable for him. But the salary cap on FanDuel, and I'll be honest, I haven't made a lineup there yet. But typically, the tightness of the cap over there doesn't make me take those kinds of chances. So I'm not sure the upside is there, and the floor to me does feel about 8 to 10 points. So neither one of these guys really excite me. Outside of them,
and you don't have the flex position over at FanDuel either to load up on a third running back. And I feel like you can find a pair of running backs in softer pricing on FanDuel without having to go to the Dallas backs in cash.
Exactly. And so, I mean, back to where I started with the Vegas value chart when we were talking about Vegas. To me, for cash games, I think you constantly need to be thinking about home favorites. And this week, you've got New Orleans and Houston. Those are the ways you have to be thinking about building your rosters around Mark Ingram, building your rosters around Lamar Miller, and hoping that these teams build a lead the way Vegas is telling us that they're going to, and hoping that they get 20-plus carries. And frankly, there's no reason not to think that's the case, because I think over the past few weeks, Mark Ingram is averaging like 25 touches a game. And Lamar Miller, coming off of last week, I think they were in a bye the week prior. He had 24 touches last week. So there's no reason to think that these guys won't get 20-plus touches this week. That's the way you have to be thinking, in my opinion, for cash games entering Week 9.
Yeah, those are my two top cash plays as well, Ingram and Miller. And Hunt, if I can afford him, but I'm not affording him on DraftKings. If I'm playing him, it's going to be FanDuel cash. Ryan, talk to me about your running back plays.
Well, if you do need the savings, I'm not opposed to Chris Thompson with Washington. I do agree with John that in an ideal world you want a home favorite, but if you're going to take a guy like Thompson, you almost want that team to be losing. Washington is a road underdog at Seattle, who's a team that is strong on the perimeter, and Thompson's a guy that can catch passes. He played, I think, all but 12 snaps last week in a negative game script. He has performed really well all year. I mean, I think it's probably a 4-reception floor for him, especially in a game that they're going to trail. He's only 6,100 there, 6,700 at FanDuel, where he's not as attractive to the scoring system. But, he's somebody, if you wanted to load up at wide receiver a little bit more, or if you wanted to get Kareem Hunt in there, who's $1,000 more than Mark Ingram, and it's really hard to get there. Thompson might be somebody you want to go with there too.
Can we ask the question, McCaffrey or Thompson?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Let's do Black Eyed Joe's here. Let Let's see on which site though, because I think the pricing matters here.
I mean, in PPR, they're both PPR backs. So let's look at DraftKings where it's 6,500 and 6,100.
Yeah.
I don't like them as much on FanDuel just because you don't get that full point and their floors are typically lower.
Okay.
So let's look at DraftKings.
Okay, so if you like McCaffrey more, hold up the green Black-Eyed Joe. If you like Chris Thompson more, go with the red Black-Eyed Joe. All right, so Ryan is alone on an island for liking Chris Thompson here. And I think I don't think it's like far apart.
No, I don't think it's crazy. I think
to me, it's just maybe, the $400 difference is the tiebreaker because I couldn't make a decision.
Sure.
And Thompson is at least capable of running the ball, and I don't think McCaffrey is. But, for a guy who about 7 weeks ago printed out a picture of Ty Montgomery because he was playing Atlanta, I do like the McCaffrey matchup a lot because he's going to catch a lot of passes in the game. But I think Thompson offers a little bit more, and he's $400 cheaper, so that was the only reason.
And both teams kind of have a similar thing going on here, right? I mean, Kelvin Benjamin is gone from Carolina, so maybe that increases Christian McCaffrey's pass catching in this game. But on the flip side, in Washington, you've got Jordan Reed is going to be out, and it looks like Jamison Crowder may miss this game as well. So their pass catchers over the middle in Washington, they may have to lean a little more heavily on Chris Thompson this week. So both may be good plays this week, but I think either one are GPP plays. Does anyone have either of these guys as a cash play? McCaffrey as a cash play?
I had Thompson at the bottom of my cash list if you had to.
Yeah. I think it's right on the fringe for me.
I think McCaffrey can be cash on DraftKings.
It's thin
on DraftKings.
The price is so hard. I mean, 6,500 or 6,100 for cash.
He's the wide receiver too.
I understand. Yeah. I get it. It's just he needs his 7 catches for 50 yards. He doesn't. He has zero chance of scoring. Not zero, but his
A-dot is 2.8 yards.
Yeah,
that's low.
That's not good.
seven catches.
So let's talk about
seven
this.
catches could be 40 yards. And that's
Who's
only
going to
11
score
points
touchdowns
anyways.
for Carolina this week? They're projected to score 21 points or thereabouts.
21.25.
Yeah, this is why I liked Cam Newton earlier because I don't know.
Yeah,
but they're going.
Funchess gets one.
Newton gets one.
Newton rushes one.
McCaffrey gets the third.
And McCaffrey.
Curtis Samuel.
Unless it's Ed Dixon.
Ed Dixon.
Yeah.
I think we're all guessing, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
Curtis Samuel shovel pass. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't dismiss the fact, and I know Austin was trying to make the point, and I just want to reemphasize that same point that in Carolina, for example, I know that Kelvin Benjamin was averaging a shade under eight targets per game. Those 8 targets have to go elsewhere. You can make the argument that they go to a guy like Curtis Samuel or Ed Dixon. I think they go to a guy who's more integrated into the offense like Christian McCaffrey. I think you make the same argument there in Washington with Chris Thompson. But for me, I'd rather go with the team who is projected to score a higher number of points, and that's Carolina. But, this is actually really interesting stuff. And I think one of these guys does do well this weekend, maybe both of them.
If Jamison Crowder sits, it changes things for me.
I think Vernon Davis is a better option, though, in that offense and could steal more targets away than Ed Dixon's going to.
Yeah, in terms of facing that Seattle defense, I think Vernon Davis is in play. Let's talk more about him at tight end for sure. Any other running backs?
Todd Gurley's the only other guy.
Todd Gurley, yep. He's the other guy on my cash list.
The only problem is that this Giants defense has been actually better, significantly better over the last couple of weeks. So they've only allowed 1 rush over 9 yards over the last two games. They started off as one of the worst defenses in football. So don't just plug Gurley automatically in. Actually look at some of the trend numbers that they are actually a better defense than what they first started out as.
Yeah, I think you can't sleep on Leonard Fournette in GPPs. He's going to be the probably lower owned of the top end running backs. His matchup isn't great here, but I think because of the lower ownership, I think he's worth considering, especially stacking with that Jacksonville defense. And then let's look at some low priced running backs. Does anyone have interest? You got it, Jeff. Tell me who you got.
I got 2 I've been trying to get in here, which I think the Tennessee backs are both in play. I think DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. I think that you're going to see Tennessee probably run the ball a lot against Baltimore. It's a great matchup. And I agree with Fournette as a GPP, but if you take away those 2 long touchdowns, which I know is tough to do, but he's averaging 3.3 yards per carry.
For me, it's the volume and the upside. I'm not saying he's a great play. I'm definitely not playing him in cash, but I will have some exposure.
There's a difference for me at 3.3 yards per carry when he's getting 24 carries versus a guy who's getting 14 or 15. So
yeah,
fair.
And he's catching the ball this year too,
which is nice. Yeah. Jeff, did you say you had so you're saying the Tennessee guys are a little bit lower price, so they can give you a little value there?
Yeah, DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry against Baltimore. I think both those guys are going to see a lot of volume, and they're going to be overlooked again this week because Tennessee's coming off the bye, and they're in a good matchup. And I think Steve has them both at like 5% or less. So if we're looking for a little cash relief, I think those guys are definitely in play.
Yeah, I would choose Murray in that situation. He should be healthy coming off of that bye. Don't
play Jay Ajayi.
Don't play Jay Ajayi, right? Yeah, we won't do that. How about an Alex Collins or an Orleans Darkwa for like going real cheap? I'm not saying these guys are like amazing, but if you're looking for real cheap, and John, you kind of nodded your head there. Tell me what you think.
I actually wanted to talk about it. I think I expressed my opinion last night on the Roto-Grinders show with you, Austin. I think both of these options are in play this week. I don't know that there are strong plays. I mean, we're talking about saving salary. And so, not everything can be a slam dunk like a Lamar Miller this week or a Mark Ingram. But if you're looking to save salary, let's say you like an expensive wide receiver or two, or you really want to go high with Zach Ertz in what looks to be a posh matchup against the Denver Broncos, you may need to save some salary. And, the New York Giants coming off of a bye week, that team's a mess. They're an absolute mess. But it is a plush matchup. I mean, I pull up the numbers here real quick. The New York Giants going against the Rams. The Rams are allowing 4.6 yards per carry against the running back position. They're allowing 22% more using your normalized statistics there on our site, Austin.
Yeah.
And he's what, 3,400. That to me, or 3,800.
He's 3,800. Orleans Dark was 3,800 on DraftKings. Yeah. My
apologies. Yeah, it's 3,800. I was looking at Wayne Gallman, who's his backup, obviously.
Sure.
It's something to think about is all that I'm putting out there. Much like where I started the show, I won't go into it again, but like Eddie Lacy at 3,200 and the last guy that you mentioned, Alex Collins.
Collins at 4,600.
Exactly. I mean, he actually looked pretty good last week. And Coach, what the heck's his name there in Baltimore? Help me out. Harbaugh has said, we're going to get him some more looks this week because he's earned those looks. And even that doesn't look terrible against Tennessee. So I don't know. These are guys you have to be thinking about because if you're looking to save salary, one of them might end up in your lineups.
Remember when you guys laughed at me at Orleans Darkwa a couple weeks ago?
I don't recall that at all. Did you liked him? I don't remember that at all. No, it's not ringing a bell.
I will say this, John. I like the Alex Collins pick, but I would be a little bit leery of Darkwood just because if there's ever a time a team might switch running backs to the younger option, this might be it after a bye week and incorporating Gallman into the offense. That's something to think about, and he's even cheaper.
Yeah. And they're 1-6.
I don't think any of these guys are sure things. I'm just saying for salary relief, you have to consider, I think these are the three guys that are in situations that are worthy of consideration.
On DraftKings as a potential third running back is the kind of situation I'm talking about. Let's move on. We've covered the running backs like crazy. We've got a lot of wide receiver injuries. Some of these sort of popping up on Thursday after they didn't seem like a thing on Wednesday. Jamison Crowder is questionable. He did not practice on Thursday. Pierre Garçon is out for the year with a neck injury. Marquise Lee in Jacksonville didn't practice Thursday. Emmanuel Sanders, limited practice Thursday. Corey Davis didn't practice Thursday. Jeremy Maclin was in a non-contact jersey Thursday. There's a few other guys here that are kind of lesser down the list, but just watch out for some of these landmines and keep an eye on some of these injury reports. Adam Humphries was limited Thursday. And then the Seattle secondary has a couple of injuries that may influence the Washington pass catchers as well. So, Jeff, I'll kick it to you first. Let's talk about some receivers here. Who do you like this week?
Well, up until today, I would have said Hopkins was your number one option. But now I'm leaning for I think Mike Thomas is probably your number one guy. But I think it's still a little leery about that. And I still think that the Saints are going to run the ball a little bit more. But you have to like his matchup. And I think Devin Funchess is probably a cash option for me across the board with his elevated status as the wide receiver 1 by default now for Carolina. The other guy I like is Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's in a great spot matchup this week. And those are probably the guys I'm looking at cash mostly. And then you really start, picking them down. The only one I would even consider for cash is probably T.Y. Hilton. Or maybe
You're really
Rashard
gonna play
Matthews.
Fitzgerald in cash?
Yeah, and PPR, sure.
Drew Stanton?
He can throw it 5 yards over the middle.
On DraftKings, you can consider it. I think on FanDuel, he's probably too expensive.
Drew Stanton's last start, he threw 2 touchdowns to Larry Fitzgerald. It was,
Ooh, stat of the night.
Yeah.
Not that was any time recently. But
Was that August?
that was last year.
2012.
Yeah, no, it was last season. I think Stanton got 1 start last season, I believe. The Hilton note is interesting because he feels especially cheap at DraftKings, only $4,900.
Yep.
So I like him as a cash play over there. Devin, who do you got at receiver this week?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think my favorite guy this week it's a get-right game, like we mentioned. It's Dez Bryant. I'll throw up the X. There we go. So Dez Bryant, we've talked about him at length, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. The other guy I kind of like this week on DraftKings at PPR is Jarvis Landry. So with the team, we talked about the running back issues. How are they going to move the ball going up against this Oakland team? This Oakland secondary hasn't been that great. So it's a scenario that I think that they could just turn their running game almost into Jarvis Landry.
John, you've got a thought on that.
My thought is that's Sunday night, so we need to be aware that I think at this point we can't play that, right?
We can't play it on the DraftKings main slate, but you could play it on the FanDuel main slate, but you're only going to get the half-point PPR.
Exactly.
So.
That's the point I want to make is that he's a lot stronger of a play, in my opinion, on DraftKings where
4 p.m. slates, baby.
you can find a slate to get
the
some
3-game slates.
Chase that Jay Cutler action.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. John, tell me about some receivers you've got on your list.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the thinnest position this week. I do like Larry Fitzgerald, as we talked about earlier. He goes up against the worst cornerback in the league, in Quan Williams. He has a 6-inch height advantage over him. I think they get inside the red zone. He's a guy that I want to be looking at. Outside of the guys we've talked about, it's mostly GPP options for me. I really want to see how Tennessee uses Corey Davis this week. That's not necessarily saying that I want to play him, but I am going to be very, very interested to see how they incorporate him into the offense. Doug Baldwin, I think, is in play this week against Washington. He's pretty high on my list. And, outside of that, I think we've covered the big guys. I think this is going to be a week where you probably spend up at running back because that's where I feel more confident. And you take a few chances at the wide receiver position after you plug in a guy like Mike Thomas, who I think is the preeminent number one wide receiver this week against Tampa Bay.
Ryan, who do you like? I saw you kind of nodding and waving the sign over there.
Yeah, it's primarily GPP, but I think you can make an argument in cash. Tyreek Hill, before facing Kirk Cousins in a rainstorm and C.J. Beathard, Dallas had given up multiple TDs in 4 straight games. I think it's a total of, 4, 6, 8, 11 touchdowns, passing touchdowns in their 4 games prior to the last 2. So I think that they're beatable. The game is a high total, like we said before. It is a shootout, and Tyreek Hill is basically always a GPP play. He's a 70-yard touchdown waiting to happen. So he's somebody that I'm looking at too.
I actually have Tyreek Hill on my cash game list towards the bottom of it, but I feel like the matchup is strong this week. You're not going to be able to get all these guys in your lineup. I'm wondering who the value play is.
Cooper
at receiver.
Kupp.
Cooper Kupp, you think?
He's getting a ton of red zone looks going up against this Giants secondary, which we've mentioned is struggling. I see him having a very good chance of getting in the end zone this week. Robert Woods is also intriguing, just because he's a volume guy. So the Rams coming off the bye are in a pretty good spot and priced accordingly.
Would you play either of those guys in cash, or is that a GPP?
I'd play Kupp in cash.
Yeah.
So is there no worry about Kupp being a slot guy and facing the one good corner the Giants have, Rogers Cromartie? He's mainly a slot corner.
I mean, just the pure volume in the red zone for
me.
Yeah,
I agree.
He had 5 targets in the red zone their last game, so he's the primary option in an offense that's going to pass the ball against this Giants secondary. And at 4,500 on DraftKings, and he's relatively cheap on FanDuel too. He's one of the main options that I'm looking at to save money this week.
Well, let me see the Black Eyed Joes. Anybody going back to Paul Richardson in GPPs this week? He spends most of his time away from Josh Norman's side of the field. Is he still a GPP play, or is that a fade because you're chasing last week's points? So I see red from Jeff and red from John, and nobody likes Paul Richardson this week. Jeff, why do you not like Paul Richardson?
Because the ball's going to Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, it is.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Nice segue.
That's the pick I'm going with. I mean, picking him out of a hat, Richardson does not see enough volume of targets, so it's kind of a all or nothing kind of play. Like, I like Deshaun Jackson this week, but he's an all or nothing kind of play. I just don't think he could be considered for cash. So I would go to Baldwin, but again, I went to Baldwin last week and he just didn't get the volume. So I think the safer play is to find somebody that's a lower value. My value pick is Rashard Matthews this week. I think that against Baltimore, that's probably where I'm going, or maybe even a Mike Wallace on who's dirt cheap on DraftKings. So I think those are 2 guys that you can go out there and find and plug in for a value play that's low end. Again, I like the Baltimore Tennessee game to shoot out, but that's just my personal take on that. So, but I think throw that aside, Rashard Matthews is the number 1 wide receiver, especially if Delanie Walker is out. He's going to see a ton of targets.
Don't sleep on the Broncos receivers this week either. I know Brock Osweiler is the quarterback, but Osweiler can't be that much worse than what Simeon has been this year, and in Philadelphia's secondary hasn't been that great. So, in a GPP, you could do worse.
I think that's a great point. I'm really struggling with that. It's maybe something we can expand upon. I actually really like these receivers because I'm not a big believer in this Philadelphia secondary, but can we rely on Osweiler to get them the ball? Because it hasn't really happened yet this year, even with Simeon at quarterback. Can we rely on either one of these quarterbacks to do it? Because the price is right, the situation is there, the game script is there, all the pieces are there. It's just whether or not the talent, when he drops back, he can find these guys. What do you guys think?
Well, they're going to have to throw the ball. So Philadelphia is one of the best run defenses in football. Denver is going to be behind. What we've seen Denver is Trevor Siemian would just audible to the run when they're down by 14 with 8 minutes left in the game. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah. So I think that Osweiler just doesn't care. He's going to continue to throw the ball. So I think the actual volume is just going to increase in this offense.
I don't buy it. I don't see Osweiler getting.
I'm not saying Osweiler is going to be good. He might throw 4 interceptions, but
yeah,
he has some games where his receipt. I mean, go back and look at when he was in Denver, and I know it was 2 years ago. He had games where Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders were fantasy relevant.
And he's throwing mostly short slants that are going across the middle. So they're higher percentage or smoke screens to these guys. So I think he's going to get the ball in the playmaker's hands and see what they can do. I like the call for both those receivers.
Yeah, I think I just wrote down, just for the record, when Osweiler was the starting quarterback in 2015, Demaryius Thomas had 84 targets, Emmanuel Sanders 56. So if you're going to err on one side or the other, I think it's Demaryius Thomas. Mm-hmm. But I do agree that this is a shaky situation, but it is intriguing to me. The one last thing I'll add is that the Denver Broncos do have the second lowest implied team total on the main slate at DraftKings. So take that into consideration as you're making your final decision.
Thomas had 3 games with 12 or more targets in 2015.
Yep.
I'm seeing those guys on the DraftKings main slate as wide receiver 10 and 12 in price. Absolutely nobody's going to be on them. So there's that.
Yep.
Yeah. I won't. Let's talk tight ends. We've got a few injuries here we're looking at. Jordan Reed is out with a hamstring injury. Let's talk a little more about Vernon Davis. Delaney Walker did not practice on Thursday. That might put Jonnu Smith in play. And then Zach Ertz is probably going to play in this game, but just keep an eye on him. He had a limited practice on Thursday with a hamstring issue. So hopefully that doesn't trend downward as we get closer to the weekend. Ryan, let's talk to you first about tight ends. Who do you like this week?
I'm starting with Jimmy Graham in cash and really not going a lot further. He's tight end 4 in price right now, but could very easily finish as that or higher. Jeff already talked about why, but so I guess going GPP, the expensive guys are attractive there because I don't think a lot of people are going to find ways to get them in, especially on DraftKings, given the salary constraints elsewhere. But I like Kelsey a lot, especially if you treat him like a wide receiver as his own team does, and Dallas's struggles with wide receivers have been notable of late. So Travis Kelsey's a 3-point 100-yard bonus waiting to happen. I saw somewhere, I think it was Graham Barfield on Twitter, said in the last 2 years, Kelsey has more 100-yard receiving games than anyone in the NFL, wide receivers included, with 9.
Nice.
So that's somebody that he's got huge upside every time he steps on the field, and that game could shoot out, like we've said before. So there's a lot of different ways to go about that one. And he's the high-end GPP guy that I'd be looking at.
Nice. Kind of the pivot away from maybe Ertz, who might be higher owned. Devin, who do you like at tight end?
Yeah, there's a couple guys. So one of the guys is entirely matchup dependent, which is Tyler Higbee. I think that they try to reincorporate the rookie, or not the second-year player, sorry. Gerald Everett is the rookie on that team. This Giants team has really struggled over the last couple of weeks against tight ends. They've allowed over the last 3 games, they've allowed five receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown average over those 3 games. So them missing Olivier Vernon does hurt that offense. Our defense, he's still going to be out. Higbee's a guy that I really like this week. And then the other guy, I mean, we've mentioned Ertz, but if he plays, I think he's probably my top guy.
Yeah, if you can afford him, Ertz isn't a great matchup against Denver there. John, who do you like at tight end?
The one guy I'm surprised nobody's mentioned yet is Jack Doyle.
Yeah.
I mean, Jack Doyle is, he continues to get peppered with the ball by Jacoby Brissett. The game script is calling for them to be throwing the ball quite often. I think Jack Doyle is probably the chalk play of the week, especially in cash games. I think with GPPs, most of the guys that I'm looking at have been mentioned. My favorite is probably Ertz against Denver because I don't think they'll be able to move the ball effectively with the receivers they have against that defensive backfield. But I do think that Ertz sets up well in terms of getting into the end zone. And looking over our Steve Buzzard's projections I'm looking on DraftKings actually. He is the 5th highest projected tight end, which is a little bit lower than I thought he would be, given the type of upside that he brings to the table for tournament formats.
I think here's the trick for me, that one of the things I'm struggling with, especially in cash game lineups, is that I like T.Y. Hilton's price a ton on DraftKings, and I don't want to put Hilton and Doyle in the same cash game lineup. Similarly, I like Michael Thomas and Mark Ingram, but I don't want to put both of those guys into the same cash lineup. I'm generally going Ingram and Hilton, even though I like the other 2 guys. Does anyone have a different take on that, either strategy-wise? Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, with the Saints guys especially, and I wrote this in my trend spotting column this week, I think Ingram outscores Thomas, or at least, maybe, 80% of the time, or coin flip, give Ingram more points more often. But just based on where they're priced, if you look at the top receivers and you just kind of go down the list, the guys above Thomas all have inferior matchups to him. And to me, his points projection is as high as any receiver, and his salary is not. So if you're really stuck to the idea that you can only have one New Orleans player, that to me makes him that guy. And then you can find kind of a similar guy to Ingram at running back. So that's where I'm at with those 2. Hilton and Doyle, it's tough for me because Hilton is a big home road guy. And so being at Houston, I know it's still an indoor surface and everything, but I do still worry about Hilton there, and Doyle's getting more targets lately too. But stronger opinion on the New Orleans guys.
The one thing I'll say about playing multiple guys in cash, I don't consider it at all when I'm building a cash lineup. So I played 3 Bengals in my cash lineup last week. So the way I look at it is that Thomas and Hilton will both be extremely popular. So you'll get Doyle. It's basically just a free square for a lot of the cash games. So you can get Doyle you're basically just playing Doyle on his own. So that's kind of how I look at it. I just try and build the best lineup that I can. And if they're on the same team, you don't need that GPP upside in a cash game, and multiple players could hit value in the same game.
I agree. Yeah. I'm weighing both Ingram and Thomas for sure.
The other part, Austin, there is if you play in 2 guys on the same team, you have a better chance of hitting that touchdown and having that touchdown equity covered versus, especially if they're the top 2 targets on the team or 2 of the top 3. So yeah, I would lean towards playing Ingram and Thomas on FanDuel. And I have Thomas on both, but I would lean towards Hilton and Doyle on DraftKings just from the pricing perspective. I think they combine for about 9.2. So you're looking at 27, 28 points. Yeah. I could see 12 to 15 catches for 150 yards and hitting value in cash. I could see that. I think there's enough equity there to cover 60 to 75% of what you're going to get out of the passing game.
I feel a little more comfortable putting both of them in the Colts guys in a DraftKings lineup because their prices are just so good. But it's something that I'm struggling with. Like, is that a negative correlation? Is it limiting my upside? So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts there.
Doug Drennan has done studies on that in the past, and he says that having 2 players on the same team actually raises your floor.
Gotcha.
I agree with that.
Yeah. John, let's see. We already went to who hasn't talked about tight ends? Who has another tight end they want to talk about? Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out 3 names. A couple have been mentioned before. Ed Dixon and Vernon Davis are solid GPP plays. Now I'm losing the third one. Come back to me. I'll think of it.
Sure. Let's see. I think with Sterling Shepard coming back this week, I think Evan Ingram goes a little bit lower on the list than we've seen him the previous couple of weeks that he's played. I think he's worth GPP consideration, but not very high ownership there. What about at 2,600 on DraftKings? Do you throw a GPP dart at Mercedes Lewis? Is that crazy talk? If Marquise Lee is out here, do they have to go to Lewis here? No. Is that crazy pants?
He got his one game of the year.
He already got his 1 game. Wait until next year. Yeah. All right.
You've also got D.D. Westbrook playing this week, right? I think D.D. Westbrook is coming in. He had a great preseason. They've been waiting up for him. So I think any volume that's lost by Marquise Lee not playing, I think could be taken up by Westbrook. So don't overthink that situation.
I would prefer O.J. Howard at 2,700.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah. I don't think it's insane, Austin.
I don't like either of them, but
yeah. No, but looking for really cheap, like under 3,000. But I think
Tyler
that's
Higbee.
a good point. Yeah,
Jonnu Smith.
Who do you got there, John?
I think Jonnu Smith is the guy I would be looking at. He's
over 3K. He's 34.
3,400. That's not quite as cheap, so I'll take that back because it doesn't compare. But
if for any reason Zach Ertz gets worse, Trey Burton at 2,500 is an option.
Gotcha. I think that's a good point. All right, let's move on. We're having too much fun talking tonight. Let's skim through our defenses and kickers pretty quickly here. You know what, Jeff? Can you just walk up? John has got the big red black-eyed Joe. John, you don't want to walk us through this? I'm shocked. Oh, disappointed there. Jeff, why don't you name a couple of cash game options for defenses and a couple of kickers at cash game?
Okay, for defenses, I think the Eagles are going to be chalk. I think Arizona could be in play against San Francisco. And I think Jacksonville is definitely going to be the third option on cash, maybe Seattle as well.
Yep.
I think Devin might have 1 or 2 more there. But as far as
Seattle's
kickers,
a play.
Seahawks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the Washington offensive line is crazy banged up again.
Yeah.
That really puts them in play. But I
Their
still like
third
Jacksonville.
string tackle got hurt, and if they had to go back on the field, I don't think that they would have had a full offensive line last week. So for me, Seattle got embarrassed last week. They're going to be looking for a revenge game at home. This defense takes things personally compared to a lot of other defenses, which don't have that they don't have that edge that Seattle has. So that's why I like Seattle this week.
Yeah. Jeff, tell us about some kickers.
Them or Philly. As far as kickers, I think we got 5 or 6 teams that have 24-plus points. I'm starting to like Fairborn a little bit more given the quarterback situation for Houston. But my number one guy is Walsh for Seattle at 4,700. And then after that, I would look towards like a suck-up for Tennessee, or maybe even Dallas with Nugent at 4,600 if you want to save a little bit of money.
You always have to get suck-up in there, I think. It's just like –
I dropped Dawson, so now I'm on suck-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Saints defense is a cheap play. Go ahead.
Oh, against Tampa Bay? Yeah. All right. I want one GPP stack from each person. Ryan, I want your stack first.
Alex Smith, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Des Bryant.
Nice. The game stack. I like it.
Do it.
Devin, who do you got?
Des Bryant, Dak Prescott.
I like it. Same game on the other side. John.
I'm doing 2. I don't care about your rules.
You wild man.
You can't tame me.
I can't contain John Lee.
Wild horses.
No, I mean, the reason I want to say 2 is because I think the most popular stack of the week is probably Drew Brees and Mike Thomas, and we can't not say that. And because it's the most popular, maybe it's not the best one to play, but it is one that certainly I'm thinking about. I'll go back to the same game that these guys are talking about. I'm going to look at a guy like Alex Smith to Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson is seeing significant targets in this offense, and I see all you looking like this. You're going to look up the numbers afterwards. Believe me, he's 3,200 on DraftKings. You can get both of these guys for less than 10,000.
He had one target Monday night.
Look the week prior, brother.
He had 8 and 5 the 2 weeks prior.
There you go. 3,200. And it's looking more and more like Albert Wilson will not play this weekend. So he's probably the wide receiver 2 in that offense. If he scores a touchdown, he reaches GPP value, and he'll be less than 5% owned.
I'm not disagreeing, so for once.
Wait, what? Who are you, and what have you done with Devin? Jeff, give me one-ish stack.
One-ish. So it's a game stack. So I like both sides of this game. I've mentioned it a few times. No one's going to have Joe Flacco this week. Tennessee's defense is terrible and against the pass. So Joe Flacco to Mike Wallace, I could see a couple of bomb touchdowns. Run it back with Rashard Matthews. That's the GPP in big tournaments that I'm looking at.
You're lucky we're running out of time.
1% owned. He's going to be 1% owned.
That will win or lose you all the money.
Mm-hmm.
My lower owned GPP stack is not that low owned, but I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett and T.Y. Hilton because that Houston defense is atrocious. Let's look at parting thoughts. Some short parting thoughts, fellas. John, words of wisdom, things you forgot, things you want to promote. What do you got?
You know, you caught me off guard here. Normally I'm not first. I won't say a whole lot this week. Check out our starting stacks. You know, we have 2 guys writing them every week. Scott Bischoff over at FanDuel, John Mamula on DraftKings. They're going to give you the same thing that we just did, only they're going to give you a lot more. They're going to give you high value. They're going to give you low value in terms of cost, high risk. They're going to give you the Drew Brees, Mike Thomas stuff. And they're site specific. So go ahead and check those things out. And I think that they're both worthy of additional looks from our audience.
Jeff, parting thoughts.
Yeah, what John said, and building on that, I think that GPPs are always fun to play, and it's a good week to do it. There's fewer games to analyze, so you can get a little bit deeper into it. And if you do a game stack, like Ryan and I just mentioned and several others have mentioned this week, where you are playing a game script more than anything else, if like you saw what happened in Seattle and Houston last week, you get a Dallas, Kansas City, or even a Tennessee, Baltimore shootout. If you're planning your flag on one thing, and that being a high-scoring game, take 3 or 4 players that could be a big part of it. That helps a lot at the ability roster, and then fill it out with the rest of it with high upside guys that are not too, the higher owned guys. That's okay because you're already building the risk and the lower ownership in that stack. So you're playing one concept.
Yeah, not every guy in your lineup has to be low owned. Pick a few and then fill the rest with guys you like that are sort of cashish plays. Devin, parting thoughts.
Yeah, I've spent the last 20 minutes looking into this Osweiler, Demaryius Thomas stack. I'm in on it, so play
it. Money. Ryan, parting thoughts.
I'll plug another article here, and Austin, you're way too humble to do it yourself. So Austin Lee's normalized strength of schedule is super cool for this time of year. He breaks it into year to date or 5 games, or even looking forward with the next 3 games. Looks at strength of schedule as opposed to just raw numbers. We referenced the murderer's row of quarterbacks Baltimore has faced before, so of course they look good on paper, but perhaps not as good on a normalized basis. So, as I do trend spotting each week, I'm looking at season-long numbers, but things change. Injuries happen. Coaches make adjustments. So really looking back 4, 5, 6 weeks is a great way to do it, and Austin takes care of that for you. So that's a really cool feature we have on the site.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. And I thank all of you for watching and listening. That's going to wrap it up for our show. Be sure to check out all of our DFS content over at footballguys.com/DFS. We've got a subscription over there we call the Insider Pro Plus. It's only $35. It gets you the entire season's worth of content, and that's all the content on the site, not just DFS. It also includes season-long and Dynasty and IDP to cover all of your fantasy football needs. So I appreciate you watching and listening. On behalf of John Lee, Devin Knotts, Ryan Hester, and Jeff Pasquino, I am Austin Lee saying thank you for watching and thank you for being a football guy. To check out all of our DFS content over at footballguys.com, click on the icon in front of Ryan's face. To subscribe to our Football Guys TV YouTube channel, be sure to click on the button on John's face. And if you'd like to see our latest video, click below me now.